Welcome to Connect at 51, the online Bible study from the Midtown Connect group of C3 Church Manhattan. For those of you joining for the first time, watch the video until you see a question screen like this, then pause and share your answers with the group. So the first question to share is this: what's the most powerful position that you've held? People are attracted to power. Even the people closest to Jesus constantly argued about who would be the greatest. We're going to examine how even a mother got involved in this argument. Read Matthew 20, verses 20 to 28. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." "You don't know what you're asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them together and said, "You know the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many." The woman in this passage is the mother of James and John. That, by the way, is the John who wrote one of the Gospels. So what do you think they thought that sitting on the right and left in Jesus' kingdom meant? The kingdom in their mind was a return to the glory days of Israel when they were a great nation. They would have had in mind a military overthrow of Roman rule and the establishment of a sovereign kingdom led by Jesus. So to sit at the right was to be the second in command, or in other words, the vice president. To sit on the left was to be the third in command. These were positions of power and influence. It's a pretty bold ask, so let's look at how and who is doing the asking. Look at the following 3 verses and see what information you can gather about James and John's mother. What do you think her name is, and who is she related to? By comparing these accounts of who was at the crucifixion, we can deduce that the mother of James and John was called Salome. Furthermore, it seems that Salome is the sister of Mother Mary. And that means that Salome is Jesus' aunt, and James and John are Jesus' first cousins. It suddenly makes a bit more sense that this mother is asking this favor. They are trying to use their family connections to gain a promotion. So now let's look at Jesus' response. What does it mean to drink the cup, and how do you think this will be fulfilled? To drink the cup is often associated with the idea of sharing in suffering. James and John are so focused on their ambition that they immediately agree to drink the cup without thinking of the consequences. And Jesus confirms that they will indeed drink this cup of suffering. It is first fulfilled in Acts 12. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. James drank the cup of suffering by being the first of the disciples to be martyred. John's suffering, on the other hand, was quite the opposite. He was the only disciple not to be killed like this, so his suffering was to live and watch all the other disciples die. So while Jesus confirms that they will indeed drink this cup of suffering, he doesn't confirm who gets to sit at his left and right. So the next question to ask is, how do people get positions of power in this world and in our society? And what do we learn from Jesus' answer about who gets to be in positions of power in his kingdom? It's worth noting that Salome, the mother, enters the scene kneeling in front of Jesus as a gesture of humility and respect. This was a custom of how you would approach a king. So Salome is not just using family connections, but also flattery to try and get this position of power for her sons. And that's how the world works. You use your connections, you use manipulation, deals, and flattery to get ahead. But Jesus says that the places on his right and left are prepared by God the Father. This shows that it's not going to be about nepotism or manipulation, flattery or deal making that earns these positions, but it's the plan that God has prepared. So this request doesn't work out as Salome, James, and John had hoped. Even worse, the other 10 disciples hear about it and are indignant. In other translations, it says they're resentful and angry and greatly displeased. So what does Jesus teach them about greatness? The fact that James and John were asking to have these positions of power is actually nothing new. In fact, the disciples constantly argued about who would be greater. They did it all the way up to the Last Supper. Literally, on the last night they had dinner with Jesus, one of the big topics of discussion at the table is who would be the greatest. Jesus taught them again and again how to be great, but they still kept failing to get it. The message was this: greatness in the kingdom is about service. Leadership is about sacrifice. Being a great leader in God's kingdom means putting others ahead of yourself. Jesus demonstrated this when he washed the disciples' feet, when he prayed until he sweat blood, when he carried the cross up the hill and gave himself up for all the world. Even though Jesus lived and taught this, the fact that the disciples kept on arguing about who would be the greatest must mean that this simple idea is very difficult to do. So the final question is this: why is it so hard to serve others? And what do you need to give to be great?